Mr. Pickett, I try to keep politics out of my hobbies. But since you keep trying to inject your politics into my hobbies, I'm going to have to respond now. Now, for anyone who's listening, you are into the nerd Dungeons and Dragons, and you like to inject your politics in there, and then as soon as you start getting some dissenting voices, you start saying that, well, let's keep this down, let's keep this under control and family friendly. You can't have it both ways, sir. Either keep the politics out or get used to debate, okay? Now, there's certain things about this game, this D&D game. The idea is that guys play it and have a fine fantasy. Then when they're done with the game, you lay your fantasies down. And what I see is young men, and even older men, keeping fantasies in their real lives. I'm going to start bursting some of these bubbles. Now, the first one is this idea of a geek girl. You see, what a nerd is, or a geek, is a guy who isn't vetted by the opposite sex. He can't enter social circles or get himself a female partner while he's a geek. Women vet themselves. So having nerding interest does not prevent them from getting a sexual partner or having social circles. They're welcome in social circles. Okay, so there's no such thing as a geek girl. There is just a girl who may have geeky interest. So I hope that fantasy is popped. And a lot of the reasons why these guys bring up these fantasies is they don't want to deal with the fact that they are second-class citizens. And so they keep up with the fantasy. Now, the next fantasy I want to destroy is this idea that you're going to get girls into Dungeons and Dragons, which is something that interests boys and guys, grown men that is, and that they are going to add to it. They aren't. They're going to subtract from it. Now, you show our old art of Dungeons and Dragons from way back in the 70s, 80s. What do you see? You see some girls that are sexual fantasies to guys. It's basically like the Red Sonja types, because that's what guys like. We have the fantasy, about the gorgeous girl in the impossible costume. And if you look at the later editions, like 4th and 5th edition, you see that scaled down a lot, because that's what happens when you get girls into this situation. You end up getting downplaying what guys like. Now, the girls, they entertain themselves with fantasy themselves. You'll see girls and women in plays and drama club because they like drama and they like dealing with relationships. So Lady Macbeth has lots of women in it that play Lady Macbeth. They aren't interested in having male fantasies where they put the sword to things and conquer and then come back as heroes. That's a guy thing. So if you're going to pander to the girls and have them come over, what's going to happen is that you're going to turn Dungeons and Dragons into Lady Macbeth. Okay? You're going to, if not ruin the hobby, you're going to make it worse. And this is another fantasy. Guys don't want to admit that they are willing to throw their hobbies away to pander to girls. They're not even getting the girl. They're just pandering to them. And this is the results. And a lot of the Dungeons and Dragons problems now is because women are attracted to the high status end of it. That is the editing and the writing of Dungeons and Dragons, maybe even the artwork. So when they do, Dungeons and Dragons suffers. Okay? Now, another thing, this idea that women are now really into Dungeons and Dragons, considering how women flock, like I say, to Drama Club, you really think women were just unaware of Dungeons and Dragons for the last 4 decades, sir? AJ? No, this is nonsense. They were never interested. And they only became interested when Dungeons and Dragons became mainstream enough and had enough status that it was worth their attention. But even so, it'll never appeal to them the way it does the boys. That's just the way it is. Now, another thing you bring up a lot, well, I shouldn't say you bring up a lot, you brought up once, is Jordan Peterson. And you talked to me and said, well, Jordan Peterson, it's good that the best thing for children is to have both parents in the home. Now, Jordan Peterson, by the way, when he says clean up your room, what he's saying to young guys is to throw away the hobbies that you love and get working to gain wealth and status to get the girl. That's what he's saying. He says ambiguously so he can cower it out of it when he needs to. But that's what he's saying. And of course, he can't say it outright because some smart guy he's talking to might figure out, he said, well, I got to sacrifice the stuff that I love to get conditional love. The girl isn't interested in me. She's interested in my wealth and my status. And guys never want to deal with that. Even when they get the girl, they get all upset when she leaves as soon as their wealth and status disappears. So Peterson is a disgusting fraud to me. And as for your assertion that, having both parents is best for the child, I have a real issue with that not because it's necessarily untrue, but the motivations when you say that. Guys do not say that because they care about the children. What they're really saying is that, sweetheart, I want to be with you. And since I do, and you have a child, take me in and I'll help take care of your child. And therefore I can end my loneliness. I can be with you. You see, it's not about the children, AJ. It's about the guy's loneliness and the fact that he doesn't want to be alone. It's about him, not the child. And so that's an insult to children everywhere. So that's why it's not that I'm not a Peterson fan. I'm totally against this bum. So please don't bring him up in your live streams and think people are just going to be quiet about it. Peterson is kind of off topic, but nevertheless, since you mentioned him, I'm going to have to mention him. Now, I care about my hobbies, which means I've got to tell men to put away their damn fantasies, sir. You play your fantasies on the game, and then you put them to bed when you're done. This is what you do. You stop trying to pander to the girls and think they're not going to make the hobby worse. You enjoy your hobby, and then you save your pandering afterwards. That's what you do. Now, you tried to get away with saying, well, we're talking about personal experiences here now. Well, what are your personal experiences? The personal experience business is all about finding a unicorn, like saying, oh, the girls, they just were brainwashed not to like D&D, but they really like D&D. They like nerd stuff. It's all been a lie or a fake. Well, you're wrong. They never liked it. It is, how did there's another group called Nerdarchy. They put it perfectly. You're playing a game about murder hobos. Girls do not want to be murder hobos. Do you capiche? They enter the game because some guys basically beg them to join. Or they have a boyfriend. They want to hang around their boyfriend while they play. And if they do play and they really are interested, you know what? They tend to look for an entire group of girls, if they could. You guys want girls involved. The girls really would just rather hang around other girls and play their style of it. And here's another thing I want to bring up. Is some guy said, well, guys tend to harass the girls. That translation in the reality, into truthfulness, means these are low status men. They're doing what every other guy does, want to hit on the girl and get with them, and the girls are repulsed by nerdy guys. So any kind of, them putting feelers out to see if they can get with her is harassment to her. They don't consider such things harassment on high status men. Do you understand? So that's a complete insult to all the guys in my hobby. I'm not interested in pandering to girls because it's a waste of a man's energy and his time. You want to do that, you do that outside the hobby. You don't try and invite it in the hobby and think your hobby's going to be all right. Now, I see this incursion of the girls into all kinds of things. Doctor Who has died off. The Marvel Universe is now taking its turn with Captain Marvel. Star Trek was destroyed. You think, Sir AJ, that Dungeons and Dragons is going to be the one exception? I don't think so. So I think that's all I need to say about these things, okay? Goodbye, sir.